We're recording.
Okay. We'll start whenever we want.
Yeah, I need to get into position. Whoa, all warmed up from that
Ready to
movie
go?
conversation.
Sound clear? We sound good?
Testing, 1, 2.
1, 2.
1, 2.
Okay.
Testing.
Right. So now you ready? You ready? Ready to go? Do you have your thing prepared?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Right.
And away.
Good to go. Hello and welcome to the 18th episode of the Powder Keg Podcast.
The show that takes your dry solo Q toast and butters it with pure free range dairy improvement.
Yeah, so we've been gone for a while. Andrew went to the wilderness to find himself, and now he's returned from Africa. So, yeah, we were missing for about a month or so, but we're back, ready to record, ready to play League of Legends, more excited than ever. More excited than ever, Andrew?
More excited than ever. I hope you guys had a lovely Christmas or a lovely
New
Hanukkah
Year.
or a lovely holiday.
New Year.
New Year. I hope you had just a lovely end to your year. Got all your New Year's resolutions.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions, Andrew?
To play League of Legends sometime. I've been keeping up to date though. My League of Legends brain is still, sharp as a tack.
I have so many New Year's resolutions.
But,
this New Year is going to be...
Owen's got a bunch of New Year's resolutions. I'm kind of already, there. I've peaked. So I don't really need any.
Nothing to fix.
Yeah, there's nothing really. I'm kind of already there. So, every year.
That's what I always tell my mum when she offers me Brussels sprouts with my roast dinner. Why would you fix what's perfect already?
I don't get it. Oh, the dinner's already perfect.
Yeah, so Brussels sprouts.
Do other countries eat Brussels sprouts at Christmas dinner, or is that just Ireland?
Well, Brussels sprouts are a pretty standard roast vegetable, I think.
But do other countries like roast dinners like we do? Because we kind of...
It's an interesting question.
It's an interesting question. So that was your intro bit, was it? The Christmas... don't slurp that, Wonder.
That was deliberate.
So, first thing we're going to do this week is that we got an iTunes review. So, as we said, best way to help us out is to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you so much anyone who does it, and if you do, we'll shout you out in the episode, and that's what I'm about to do just now. So, from you've got a ridiculous name, Chomerny, you need more vowels in there, mate. 5 stars, amazing podcast for improvement and entertainment. I fell in love with this pod after listening to the Assassin one. It's one of the few LOL pods, maybe the only one, that the hosts are very likable and extremely intelligent about the game.
Holy shit.
Their chemistry is great, and the knowledge and tips are extremely deep and thought out. Can't wait for the next one. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much, Chomerny. Really, really appreciate it. Anyone else, that sort of thing, it helps us out so much, not just to inflate our egos, but also it just helps us out big times, getting us out there, getting us on iTunes, getting people to look us up.
Also, Andrew's
Expanding
not
empire.
being sarcastic here. He does actually, when Andrew reads things, he tends to just sound like he's making fun of it.
I'm not making fun of Chomerny or anybody. I'm genuinely, this is the best way to get us out there, so thank you so much.
That was also a very nice...
That was extremely kind. Thank you. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's my sincere voice.
Yeah.
Really do appreciate it. Thank you, Chomerny.
Genuinely.
So another thing happening recently I think is really interesting is this whole... So we're a bit late kind of to a lot of this stuff, particularly because this will be coming out in a few days.
So we're going to kind of be discussing a couple of things that have happened over the past couple of weeks. Like, we're going to be hitting the big points.
Big points, yeah.
Nails on the head.
Number one, Meteos. So, and we have to take some hits here. We've got to take an L here because we've kind of pushed the whole Meteos is great bandwagon a couple of times because basically the reason I've always liked Meteos is that he's willing to take a stand for his own morals, that he's actually he's willing to take some sort of, it's like stake his place. And he said before, he gave out about Tyler 1, but he said this guy's an asshole, why are you all giving him attention? And I loved that because like very few people do this. Everyone kind of hangs out with him, or we've talked about this in the pod before. Everyone's kind of willing to entertain him because it gets kind of them views, it gets him views. Going against him would lose all his fans from your viewers, so monetarily it makes sense. But he didn't do that. He stood up to him. He kind of said, no, toxicity is bad. We shouldn't stand up for this guy. We should set an example. So recently, Meteos, he got drunk playing the game with some of his mates, and he essentially...
You stand there like, he got drunk playing the game. He got drunk on the game.
And then
drunk
played
on
the
love.
game with his mates. I don't know what the occasion was, his birthday or something. But, and he ended up kind of feeding in a couple of games.
Well, it wasn't kind of feeding. He was intentionally feeding, and he was...
Yeah, he hinted. He went like 0-27 or something.
He went 1-24, I think.
1-24. So that's very bad. You shouldn't int. And but what was so this happened, okay. He did that. It made its way onto Reddit. And it seriously made its way into Reddit. There was a lot of threads really going after him. And, and that's okay. And what the threads are really going after him, and there's a lot of comments about this hypocrisy from Meteos, and that, You've given out so much about Tyler 1, yet you're the same man. Inside all of us, perhaps, is Tyler 1. Maybe we should all just embrace this inner beast.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like maybe inside all of us there is like a bad person. Maybe we should just all be a bad person. It's like, well, I don't know if that's logical.
Well, I don't know if anyone actually said maybe inside all of us. That might have been an elaboration by me. Yeah. But basically, Tyler 1's event. Meteos is a hypocrite, you know. It's worth considering.
At least Tyler 1's funny.
Meteos inted in one game while being very drunk. That's really bad. You shouldn't int in any games. I've never inted before. I was never inted before.
I don't feel like that invalidates his stance, though, regardless. And I actually...
I was making my point.
Sorry, dude. Go ahead.
So, what Meteos did was bad. You shouldn't do that. You should never int. It's not excusable, regardless of whether you're drunk or not. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't drink and play ranked anyway. So that's bad. What he did was bad. However, what he did was not get 10 accounts banned for consistently abusing and verbally assaulting people and being racist and being horrible and telling people to kill themselves over a long, consistent period of time, and then using that to gain notoriety and monetarily profit off it, like Tyler 1 has done. So what he has done is not equal to what Tyler 1. What he has done is very bad, and I don't. Did he even apologize for it? Because he really should apologize for it. I saw on his Twitter he didn't.
I feel like it's kind of a difficult. So first of all, just on the topic of the fact that I don't necessarily think it validates his stance on the whole kind of don't feed, don't be toxic in your games. I do think it's kind of a problem when people tend to kind of cite hypocrisy as like a reason to disregard someone's views, because there is a tendency to like, you see an awful lot in like any viewer opinion where people will basically use the good things someone does as like to weigh against the bad things someone does. This sort of thing. So they'll use it as a reason to kind of blame this person, or they'll use the bad things someone does to invalidate the good things someone does. And I feel like there's no real reason to do that. You can criticize the bad things someone does. So in this case, you can be like, Meteos, don't feed in your games, don't drink and then play League of Legends. Full stop. You can do that. But I don't feel like that's like, so therefore, all the good things you've said about, you know, don't be toxic, Tyler 1's not a good person, those are all mute. They're all void. Because that's like people do with all sorts of things. People do it to like vegans and stuff. This is kind of related to I've been discussing this before. People often say to like vegans, well, is that jumper you're wearing, is that made in China? Well, did you know that China have loads of animal abuse? Why are you wearing that? It's like, well, I just bought this jumper. I'm vegan because I'm doing my best to help whatever I believe in. And it's like people always do this kind of thing where they're like, do you drive a car? Do you realize all those emissions are killing animals or destroying the environment? It's like, well, you know, you do your best, and you shouldn't judge what someone does well based on what they don't do well. So again, I feel like this is kind of
I agree with you so
perfect
much.
Case of that.
Consistency is the sole value of the valueless. Hypocrisy is underrated. Everyone should be a hypocrite. I'm not even joking. There's nothing wrong with being a hypocrite. Again, it's all about your ego. It's about like the reason people avoid hypocrisy so much is because of their image. That's what they really care about. It's not about actually what values you hold that matter to you. It's about that you can be perceived as being consistent with the values you present. Sure, everyone should be striving to be a good person and stuff, but there is such a big focus in general on stuff like hypocrisy, and this is a completely off topic.
Yeah.
But this is the thing I've thought for a while. It annoys the hell out of me. People focus so much on stuff like hypocrisy. It's like, no, you should focus on the merits of what someone says or the individual merits of what a person does. The actual consistency of their actions and what they've said is kind of irrelevant.
Like, you can judge the person's like character if you want, but don't judge like their actions themselves and what those actions say for their character. So it's like, yeah, just not on a basic level. I still think, to return to League of Legends for a sec, I think definitely it was a low moment for Meteos. Pretty damn unfortunate that he was streaming, pretty unfortunate that he did it for both him and his fan base and, you know, the League of Legends community, because it does kind of, it will, regardless of what we say, definitely, regardless of what we, the arbiters of the League of Legends community say, it will definitely hurt his image. And that I do think he had a certain image of being, you know what, he is a stand-up enough guy versus Tyler 1. I do think it's definitely hurt that a lot. And I do think it has kind of added to a degree to this kind of perception of, you know, toxicity is not that bad. You know, even Meteos is toxic sometimes. So I do think that's definitely a bad thing. It's the worst thing that's come out of that. But otherwise, I think for the most part, people shouldn't use it as a reason to disregard what he said. Or
a reason to say, well, maybe Tyler 1 isn't that bad. Because I think that was a big reason why it took such traction on Reddit, was because there's another guy, apparently he was dissing some other toxic player. And basically all the fans, because I was watching Beyond the Rift, and Scar and Cutie Pie were talking about this, and they were basically saying like, So it's not just us who are the anti-Tyler one and the pro Meteos people. They're saying basically these fans kind of saw what happened and just like leaped on it like ravenous wolves. They're like, well, look, therefore this means, you know, as we were saying, this means Tyler one's okay. Yeah. So it was kind of opportunistically approached. That said, restate, Meteos, he should have kept squeaky clean because he had taken on this role as someone, as I said, he was kind of standing up for his own morals. Yeah. He had probably an extra responsibility because he's one of the few people who actually did stand up for that. So, you know, we're disappointed in Medias at the Powder Cake podcast.
Disappointed in you, Medias.
And so his planned guest appearance in the next episode, we might have to delay it. Might have to cut him off that one. Maybe he can come back. He keeps begging to come back on. But
speaking of Beyond the Rift, Andrew. Speaking of I'm a Cutie Pie, bit more drama.
Segue.
Popped up. Segue. It's popped up in the last. It's been in the last week. I think it was about a week ago that it started between I'm a Cutie Pie and the dark shadow of Reddit that is despised, Nightblue.
Oh yeah,
everyone hates. I mean, in all fairness, I used to very much be like, why do Reddit dislike Nightblue? Like, Nightblue's like just a good instructed streamer. I do find him a bit annoying.
Flamingo.
He's like the ultimate cappuccino. He's like the ultimate Twitch creature that's just been fun. Again, he said streaming for so long. He's just been kind of formed. Like you see. In all fairness, you do see like even Double Lift, he uses the Pacinos, he uses the Kappas, he uses it's just kind of like it's hard to stay away from the kind of
the reaching Nightblue's tendrils.
Not Nightblue, Twitch.
Oh, sorry.
But it's influenced, Nightblue into like engineering.
He's just embraced it mostly.
Yeah, so...
but anyway, what actually happened though?
So basically what happened was, I'm a Cutie Pie was talking to... So again, I don't have all the information banged down. This is kind of like I've taken this.
You don't expect us to actually research this.
Yes, this isn't like instructional. So please don't come back to us and be like, here now. It's not. So basically, what happened was I'm a Cutie Pie was talking to someone on stream. Shifter, I believe it was. And he basically was talking about Nightblue, or something like Shifter was like, oh, Nightblue's on your other team. And I'm a Cutie Pie, or it was the other way around, or something like that. But basically, I'm a Cutie Pie said, sure, Nightblue's perma-stuck in D5. Was what he said in this kind of I'm a Cutie Pie fashion. And you know, I'm a Cutie Pie fashion. There are debatable things about that. But basically, said it. I don't think he meant it as a real diss. I think it was more kind of he says it offhand without thinking about it. Basically, Nightblue took offense to this. Basically, muted I'm a Cutie Pie. He ended up popping up in a couple of games. This is actually where I kind of happened onto this because I was actually watching I'm a Cutie Pie stream and Nightblue was in one of his games. And I'm a Cutie Pie was playing Zig's bot, I think, and I'm a Cutie Pie was playing Zig's bot, and Nightblue was playing Shyvana jungle, and he was like taking I'm a Cutie Pie's farm and taking I'm a Cutie Pie's blue buff, and he was kind of like, and he muted him, and I'm a Cutie Pie was like trying to talk to him, and he was trying to talk to the other team, tell them to talk to him, and then he was like messaging him on Twitter and stuff, and then Nightblue blocked him on Twitter too. So Nightblue on his stream was kind of, I think to a degree, using it as a publicity thing. I don't know exactly what the turnout was. I think Andrew has more information on that. But from my perspective, it did seem very much like Nightblue was like he was saying on his stream, like, you know, he's going to get what's coming to him. He thinks he can diss everyone. I'm making a video. I'm outing him. I have so much information on him. He has nothing on me. He's going down, sort of a thing. And everyone was like, oh no, you should message me. He was like, no, there's nothing you can say. He's dead to me. There's nothing you can say. And he kept talking about it like a lot on his stream. Like I went back like an hour later and he was still talking about it. So it did seem like he wasn't like annoyed enough that he just didn't want to address it. It seemed like he was annoyed enough that he wanted to keep it kind of as a topic because he was getting a lot of viewers. And I'm a Cutie Pie and him were both streaming at the same time. And I'm a Cutie Pie was talking about it and he was talking about it. So it was kind of this continuing thing. Basically, then apparently he made later an apology.
Well, see, he had accused then. So he basically, to speed up our explanation, he accused Cutie Pie of not paying his editor or not paying him enough.
And also botting.
So then that was the big thing.
Using view bots.
And then he released an apology video, which was going great. And then he ended it with, but everything I said was true.
I think it was kind of both like, I accept your apology, I'm a Cutie Pie, and I respect you. And it was kind of like both an apology and kind of an accepting apology video. And then apparently he ended it with, it's what Double Lift was saying on the stream. Double Lift was not a big fan of Nightblue's take on this, but
basically, what's interesting is that I think quite clearly Nightblue already had a bit of a beef with Cutie Pie. because PewDiePie is always saying crap about people and then laughing it off. I think he was making a wider meta point that PewDiePie often says things that are toxic as shit, and then
due to his personality,
and then laughs about it and says, "Ah man, it's cool." Or he So this is what's interesting here is that I was watching Beyond the Rift and Scar was talking to PewDiePie about it, and PewDiePie was like, "Hey man," he kind of gave his version, obviously quite biased and one-sided, naturally. And this guy's like, "What do you think, man?" And Scar was like, "Well, you are toxic as shit, PewDiePie, and you have a way of manipulating your Twitch followers and other people's Twitch followers to abuse people." And then you laugh it off, and PewDiePie was like, "Do I?" So Scar is real honest with him. And it's true, PewDiePie does have this way, it's like, well, I'm just trolling or whatever, and you just kind of get, I think Nightblue was kind of saying that as a general point, that PewDiePie does things and it says, well, it's fine because it's PewDiePie. Whereas it actually is insulting to Nightblue, you know.
Again, I do understand what Nightblue was saying. I do think he had definitely some merits to what he was saying. 'Cause he's basically like, I'm a PewDiePie kind of shits on everyone, and because he's I'm a PewDiePie, he can laugh it off. And if anyone else said that or did that, you know, everyone would jump on them. I think Nightblue actually mentioned something like Meteos, because that had happened recently. But yeah, I do understand that. I do also think Nightblue was kind of using it as well as a bit of a publicity stunt. But certainly, yeah, it's like it's definitely a real mismatch with different players and what they say and what they do and how the community views it. Like I mean, PewDiePie is pretty toxic in a lot of his games, and I mean, you can understand that, you know, if he's not typing in chat, I guess it's okay. But he has a huge Twitch viewership, and him like dissing and shitting all over other players on his team, especially when they have streams and stuff, and then his viewership go to them and they're like, I'm a PewDiePie, thinks you're trash, oh you suck. It's like, it is like, and Nightblue was saying like my entire Twitch viewership at that time was literally just like telling me I suck, which is frustrating, and to an extent you do.
That happens to everyone.
Yeah, I know, and that's what Double F was saying. Double F was like looking at his chat, he was like, oh, this guy just said I was bad, like, like Double F was like crying, because obviously Twitch, you know, Twitch viewers aren't always the kindest and most gentle of viewers. But certainly, yeah, you do understand a certain amount of what he was saying, that it is definitely a responsibility, as you said before, if you have a huge viewership on Twitch and stuff, to at least moderate yourself to an extent, because it's not just in game, you know, there's a whole community surrounding that.
But it was a disproportionately emotional response, and as well, like all these random accusations about things that he never really backed up. But anyway, we're going pretty long on this. So other things that have happened recently, they're not released, but they're going to release soon the practice tool.
Yeah, that's something that which
is really exciting.
That is really exciting. You can set like cooldowns to 0. You can do all sorts of things.
Set your level to stick at a point, and then like minions, so you can do like last hitting a level 1 forever, all that sort of stuff. Stuff we love. We love improving the Patty Cake podcast. So I mean, that's going to be
one of the. I mean, we've talked about like practicing stuff. I mean, to be honest, that like if I mean again, like an awful lot of what we talk about is about game sense and about like decision making and stuff, which aren't things you can necessarily practice in practice mode. But this is really one of the places where you can really practice your mechanics.
Raw mechanical stuff.
Raw mechanics. Yeah. Like muscle memory and stuff. Like literally, if you're doing like, if you want to practice, let's say your Lee Sin insects, like you're gonna be able to go into a practice mode game and just like set your ultimate cooldown to 0, set your W cooldown to 0, set your wards to 0. And just do it like again for like 5 minutes, and I mean you'll have it down pat. So it's definitely.
Do you know what time we started at?
No.
How far in are we, Robin?
18 minutes.
Cool. So other things that have happened, they've released some video called Fight in all caps, and it's about some Muay Thai, I don't know how to pronounce it, fighter who plays League of Legends. So I didn't watch it, but there you go.
Diverse community. There you go.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Monte and Doa have left LCK. Presumably they've gone to Overwatch forever now, so they'll be missed. Very good commentators. I've been following Doa since everyone laughed at him for being a terrible commentator in StarCraft 2, and then in StarCraft 2 everyone sort of realised he's actually quite a good commentator, and then he moved to League of Legends and continued to be a very good commentator. Monte was obviously always very quality, very good at what he did.
Yeah.
Bit of a lodestone or a bit of a kind of a lightning rod for drama.
Which, you know, isn't a terrible thing, so I just disagree.
Yeah, he raised points that needed to be raised probably. He's gone. So, but he's in Overwatch now. We'll see. I don't know much about the Overwatch competitive scene. I kind of stopped playing that game. So hopefully wish them all the best. Good commentators.
Hopefully we'll wish them all the best.
So hopefully everything goes well, and we wish them all the best.
Yeah.
From the Patty Cake podcast.
From the Patty Cake podcast.
It'll reduce our pre-show significantly not having Monty in the community. Anyway.
No, that's true.
He's been gone for a while though.
And Meteos is also dead to us too now, so we can't talk about him either.
You can't find about Meteos. We had another, remember last episode, I'm getting this up here. Last episode we had a couple of Faker quotes, you know, Faker being a real badass, you know, and you got those cool quotes. There's another one here that came up on Reddit, I got really high up about it. I'll say it to you, Owen. You tell me the first thing you think when I say it to you. Mad life on Faker. When I played games with Faker, he would say, I got him. I was puzzled at first as to what he meant, but then it would show he got a kill 5 seconds later. What do you think when you hear that?
He's a time traveler, obviously.
No, we just do that in like every game.
Yeah, I mean...
Everyone does that, don't
like I've got him. That just shows that you can kill someone, or that I mean...
Yeah, you say that all the time. You're about to all in someone.
Yeah, to an extent, it's like okay, obviously he's good. Obviously, it is more impressive when it's like a high level of play, and when like you're in lane and you're just like, I can kill this guy, and then you kill them 5 seconds later. Obviously, that's impressive. But like, yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly it's not as impressive when when it's Diamond 5 players or whatever. Like, but yeah, no, definitely I was like playing Rengar and stuff. I'll always just be like, this guy's dead.
Yeah, I guess particularly with Rengar actually. Yeah.
But that's like,
it'd be funny if it was talking about him playing Rengar. But yeah, I just thought I was like, I think he's said crazier things than that before. Yeah. Like, surely there's better stories about Faker than saying that.
New patch, Warwick rework.
Oh yeah, Warwick. Forgot to mention Warwick.
It's definitely an interesting. I'm so excited for that rework. I mean, again, I've been missing Rengar a lot. I've been missing the old pre-rework champion. I haven't played an awful lot of the new Rengar. I just find it clunky, and I'm not a big fan of it. But so when I first saw this, I was like, "Oh, he's fast! Oh, his Q is an auto attack reset. He jumps really far." I was like, "It's Rengar," and then no, not quite. But it definitely, the champion looks like thematically like. I'm sure you all saw the YouTube video of the kind of like, where's and it's ripping me apart. But the champion, just the design, like, because again they were like, we want to make him like a real wolf, like, so not like a hunter, but instead just like real primal. So they've certainly done that with like the whole blood scent thing. If he can like smell low level champions like all around the map, he can follow their trails and stuff. Like, super cool. And thematically, just like looks like they've done a nice, because like his ultimate is both kind of point and click, but it's a skill shot now as well. So tanks can block it and stuff, but it's still like hard CC, and so it definitely looks like an interesting champion.
Yeah, honestly, they've kind of been knocking most reworks out of the park. So
yeah,
very high expectations because they're just very good at them.
Rise.
Rise
he's
strong, but it's definitely better than
No. I actually think the most recent iteration is pretty bad.
Yeah, Rise definitely isn't among their best ones for sure.
They keep trying. It's just hard.
Yeah, Jesus. But yeah, it looks, and they're kind of keeping his level of play not too complicated. They're trying to retain the kind of simplicity.
Still said he's like,
that's something you lose a lot when all the new champions tend to be very complicated with loads of shit going on. So it's nice to have some simplicity still in the game with new designs, and not just to have all the old designs be simple, all the new designs be hyper complicated.
Yeah, I do think that's actually one of the things they've done well with the new thing, in that like he has like his W's are passive that he can activate, but it's very much like it gives him a movement speed boost. His Q is a very basic like auto attack reset that can heal him. Like, it's very similar to the previous champion, except they've kind of spiced it up a bit. They've given it a bit. It looks a bit nicer. But like again, like champions like Echo and stuff, you're always like, whoa, so many like abilities. Yeah. Like champion like
any
Camille,
recent champion.
You're like, it's so complicated. Yeah. Whereas I do think there is definitely power. Again, like with the old Rengar, like, he was very simple, but there was an awful lot you could do with that simplicity. And I actually think the Rengar wasn't very complicated. But like certainly with more recent champions, it is kind of like there's an extent where you're top loading a kit too much that it actually isn't that complicated. It's just like there's so many different little parts of it.
Yeah. It's like clearly they hate only having 4 abilities to work and a passive to work with. They're like, just give me 10 abilities, because the Q it throws out a thing that flies back, but when it flies back, if it hits you, you gain this thing and this shield. Speed. If you hit someone, you get extra movement speed. But it also has a passive. It's like, just come on, just use your 4 abilities. Yeah. There's a complexity creep pretty significantly.
Yeah, like Kled and stuff as well. It's like he has 8 abilities and they're all reactivatable, and it's just like, yeah.
But other stuff, Afro Moo gave an interview where he said what we'd kind of been saying, and this is about double lift, and he was saying, I think if he streams for a couple months, he'll realize how much better being a streamer is, and he's never going to come back. So double lift then gave an interview saying, if I ever come back, I'm going to shit on everybody. It was pretty funny, which he might do, but as we kind of were saying, I kind of agree with Afro Moo, like, might as well just make money and chill out in your house. Why would you enter this stressful world where the wolves are at the door just so you can make less money? I don't know why you do that. 10 bans are coming in soon.
Yeah, it's pro play as well. So.
We'd already ranted about 10 bans before, to be honest.
So they're not going to get played.
Yeah, Zed, you're not going to get to play in your work, mate.
I don't know. You will get banned actually, of course.
Yeah. So last thing to be talking about is did an Ask Riot where they addressed finally the much aligned topic on Reddit of refunds. Redditors have been asking for more refunds for a long time now, and they gave a thing saying, Yeah, we're not gonna give you more refunds.
I mean,
they said basically if it's a choice between free content and refunds, we like to give you free content.
I mean, the number of skins I've gotten
Yeah.
from the friggin' chests at this point is just like I don't even pay that much I don't even know half the skins I have from champs. They just randomly unlock skins that I think are cool. I have like 3 Echo skins now because I got like 2. Like, I already got Sandstorm. I got the what's it called, Project one from a thing, and I think I also got the Academy one from a thing. I just like unlocked them both. I was like, why not? Like, I mean, refunds, they're just, it's like,
If a refund is essentially just one free thing because you're refunding something you don't want to give it.
so
It costs them every time they give you a refund. They said both refunds and free things come at significant cost to Riot, so we have to be careful about which we're allowed to give. And said so at the moment we're just choosing, which makes so much sense. So just guys, give up on your refunds, take your free shit. So and that's the pre-show then. So we're going to the main show on.
Main show. So last week we were discussing basically how not to throw a game when you're ahead, when you have an advantage, when you've established an advantage over a game. So this week we decided to kind of, well, not last week, a month ago.
Last episode.
Last episode we were discussing that. So this week we've decided to turn the tables, switch the
decks.
Switch the decks. Oh, that's what you meant. That was like magic
decks. Is that called switching a deck? That's not.
No.
Scratching. No.
Okay, it doesn't matter. So this week we've decided to discuss how to come back when you're behind, as opposed to when to maintain a lead when you're ahead. So, do you want to just throw ahead, just jump right into the topic?
Yeah, so we've got a few different headings under this. So, as I said, it's the opposite of throws. You want them to throw. As I said, nothing feels worse than winning or losing when you're way ahead, as we said last week. Well, very few things feel better than making a really good comeback when you're behind.
That's true. And we're also like feeling real good at How to Game Podcast, just as well as not feeling bad. Because I do feel like we talk an awful lot about how not to feel shit about yourself.
Yes, this episode is about building yourself up rather than knocking yourself down. Yeah. So under the first section.
First step of coming back from any game is understanding how you're behind. How and when you're behind.
Yeah, and how far behind you are. Yeah. Because like how many times, we're as guilty of this as anyone, you lose a game or you win a game and you look back at the gold report, you know, you've got the little the graph that shows your gold and who was furthest ahead at this point, et cetera, and it just doesn't align as how you thought it was at the time. Because at the time you saw, well, they have this many kills, we have this many kills, therefore you have this idea in your head of who was ahead or who was behind this amount. And so often you'll look back and you'll just have been completely incorrect in game. So obviously pretty important to learning how to come back and when to come back is to have a clearer idea of at which points in the game, kind of how far ahead you are or how far behind you are. So that's what this first section will be about, trying to figure out what things to look out for to know how you're behind in different ways.
Yeah, and so like again, just to reiterate that, like I think people just first of all just don't judge because first of all we're going to talk about just how to identify when you're behind, and then we're going to go into talking about like identifying how exactly you're behind, because of course the first step to coming back in a game is understanding how you're not behind and kind of challenging the opposing team in those areas, because obviously you're not going to win if you're just challenging them straight up and you're very far behind in that gold. So yeah, first of all, the first step to understanding how to come back in the game is obviously to understand you're behind. So let's say kills are even 17-17 or something, towers are sort of even, and then you go and you do team fight. This happens all the time in solo queue, and you just get 5 manas, and you're like, what the hell? And then you look at the scoreboard and you see, oh, their top laner is 100 CS more than my top laner. Oh, my bot laner down 2 levels. Like how did this happen? You're asking yourself. And it happens all the time. You know, maybe they were zoned off, maybe they DC'd, maybe they just have been, AFK under tower for a long time. And this is just to understand that, there's more to a disadvantage. This is basic gold disadvantage. There's more that filters into a team's gold than kills. And I feel like that happens all the time where people are like, 17-17, kills are even. Oh, they have 20 towers, but kills are even, guys. We can fight them. So basically just first of all understand that, towers, neutral objectives, CS, kills, these are all things that filter into when you're behind. And just understanding that you are behind and that you can't fight the opposing team is kind of the first step to understanding how you can come back from that deficit.
But also there's kind of there's a lot of problems as well with that approach, because if you've got this approach where you're saying, obviously we're not just looking at the kills to see who's further ahead. Oh, we're 2 kills ahead, therefore that's how far our team is ahead. But in reality, you could be down towers, you could be down. Even if you include CS, even if you include neutral objectives, even if you include towers, and then you look at the kills and you make a judgment in your head, okay, therefore we have 2 dragons, 2 infernals, but they're ahead 5 kills, but we have 2 towers. There, when you make all these little calculations and you come out with, okay, so we're this far behind. And even doing that is pretty dangerous because there's a few kind of, dangerous aspects that come up when you think about that. Because what if 6 of their kills are on their Blitzcrank support? And what if your equivalent 6 kills are on your Vayne AD carry? Naturally, your team fight will gain a lot from this disparity, from the fact those kills are there, these kills are here. Similarly, things like that, like, I don't know any other examples, but yeah, things like that will come in. So what's kind of more important, or what if your AD carry hasn't bought and they actually have 3,000 gold in the bank and you go in and engage? What if their AD carry hasn't bought and you engage? What if their mid laner is down actually a few levels or something like that? So what's worth looking at, instead of just looking at the kills and the towers and the CS, you include all that. But what really matters in the team fight, what these things all lead to, are item disparities. So what you really want to look at is, well, what items does their AD carry have compared to our AD carry? What items does their mid laner have compared to our mid laner? Because all that other stuff is kind of just fluff. It's kind of stuff that's telling you, it's leading to this item disparity. But what actually matters in the team fight will be that item disparity.
Yeah, and so basically what we're saying is that, so first of all, important thing to coming back is identifying if you're behind. So obviously looking at item disparities is a great way to understand if you're behind. You could be behind, but there might not be an item disparity as well. So you can be behind in different ways. So this is kind of moving on to identifying how exactly you're behind, because you can be behind in a number of different ways. There are even games, in fact, where you're not behind in gold at all. The only way you're behind is, let's say, in map control, in vision. Let's say you have no vision anywhere. That is a disadvantage. That's a genuine deficit, and you should take that into account when you proceed with whatever game plan you want to do. So this is kind of moving into, so items, that's a huge thing you can look at in terms of looking where you're behind. Like maybe your team composition is a disadvantage in terms of the 5v5 fight. Maybe you just have, maybe you have like no frontline whatsoever. And let's say you're even enough on go, but you just have no frontline. So you just can't 5v5 fight. That's a genuine disadvantage if you're looking to 5v5 fight. And often if you don't identify that disadvantage, because it is a disadvantage, then you won't be able to win the game, because you'll just play as though you didn't have that disadvantage, and you'll play to 5v5 fight, you'll play to siege. Let's say you'll play to siege when you have no range champions because you have Pantheon AD carry. Like these are all genuine disadvantages that you have to identify, and by identifying them, you'll understand how you can abuse the places that you aren't behind.
Yeah, so think about that. So, well, it's worth kind of considering that you can be behind in different ways. Let's say you may not be that behind in gold, but you may be way behind in vision, or you may be way behind in neutral objectives, even though you're ahead in gold, things like that. It's worth considering the vast majority of games, one thing begets another thing begets another thing.
Yeah.
So usually, if you're way down in gold, if they have way more items, they're going to use that advantage to gain map control, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. So it's probably not too worth your time to be like, well, we're behind in gold, but like actually we're behind in map control as well. But what are we at? We're actually at neutral objectives as well. Generally, being behind is kind of a binary thing, kind of a linear thing, where you're either ahead or you're behind. The game is zero sum. But it is also worth considering you might be more behind in vision this game, but the last game in this position we had way more vision, but we were actually down a bit more gold, that sort of thing. It will change how you're focusing on getting back. Yeah. And that brings us to our next section.
Yeah, and just to say again there on that point, so I think basically the identifying ways that kind of you're stronger or weaker than the opposing team is less identifying places that you're behind. So you might necessarily be behind in your team composition. You might just be weaker in a 5v5. These are more identifying strengths and weaknesses of each team, so you can abuse those strengths when you're behind to offset that disadvantage. Because very much when you're behind, you have to play off the strengths your team has. You can't just kind of blindly play the game as you can often when you're ahead. So when you're behind, it's far more important to identify where your strengths lie, so you can abuse those strengths to offset that disadvantage. So yeah, moving on to basically.
Yeah, so one big way, if you want to get back, if you want to kind of analyze an aspect which you can use to get back, would be, as we said kind of there, the team compositions. So you may have analyzed their head this much gold, but what if their head this much gold and that's all on, let's say, their AD carry and their mid laner, but your Jack's top laner is actually quite far ahead of their Teemo. Teemo's probably a bad example. It's something similar to Jack's, like a Tryndamere. Your Jack's is way ahead, he crushed lane, although your mid laner and your bot lane both lost. It looks like here, if you went into a team fight, it wouldn't go very well for you. Their mid lane, their bot lane would use their advantages to swing the team fight, you'd lose the team fight and you'd die and you'd lose the game. But if you can analyze the fact that we're not actually behind in our top laner, who can split push because he's a Jax, we can use this advantage, send our Jax up. We can kind of avoid a team fight mid, get pushed back, let the Jax get things. Hopefully he pulls 2 people up. Maybe then we can get a 4v3, something like that. At that point, you're looking at the team composition. Not so much the team composition, you're looking at the relative advantages throughout your team and throughout their team. You're saying, well, we actually have an advantage in this one area. Let's abuse this little advantage, try to offset the advantages they have. As well, even just looking at the general team compositions, let's say there's kind of just a more general homogenous advantage they have. They're this far ahead, we're this far behind. But we have an Orianna and we have a flipping Malphite. So if we can actually get a decent 5v5 off, maybe we can actually win this game. Clearly they know this, they're sending people to split push, they're going for picks, they're doing things like this. But we know if we can just kind of back off, hope they group together, get a big fight, then we can offset their big gold advantage by using our team composition advantage, by using our superior team fighting.
Yeah, and again, like you might be listening to this and saying, well, obviously I know if we have an Orianna and Malphite that we should be looking for team fights. But when you're behind, it's even more important to kind of identify these kind of margins by which you can win the game. Because like obviously if you're ahead and you have a Malphite and Orianna, like you could just Malphite could miss his ultimate, Orianna could just ult herself. Like you're probably still going to win the team fight just because you're ahead. When you're behind, it's very much, again, the margins are far tighter. The windows of opportunity are far smaller. And it's all about understanding these strengths, understanding the strength. Maybe we have a split push strength, in which case we have to use that split push strength, otherwise we lose the game. Maybe we have, again, a team fight strength, which is more unlikely, especially if they're like just homogeneously ahead of you. But again, identifying those strengths, because maybe they've all backed except for 2 of them. Like again, identifying these windows of opportunity is really how you can come back in the game. And so again, this is stuff like how often do you see in a game where it's like your LeBlanc mid is so far ahead, or she's 10 kills, and their Lissandra mid is 0-6, and you're kind of going in. Let's say they have Lissandra and Elise. I'm trying to think of another champion, good pick champion. Maokai or whatever. Okay, so yeah, Jin or whatever, right? And basically, LeBlanc steps up slightly too far. She gets Elise cocooned, Lissandra ult, and she dies instantly. And then it's like, oh, the game's 4v5, we have to back off. And they guess that this is all like them identifying that they have pick potential, and basically just waiting on that pick, and just going like, we're going to give up everything. We're going to give up towers slowly until we can get a pick. Is them identifying that strength of their team comp. And understanding that, we can't contest them on anything other than getting picks, basically, and making it a 5v4. And that's often true when you're ahead as well. But specifically, is it important when you're behind, because you don't have the margins to kind of play around with a Lissandra or an Elise. You have to wait on that kind of trigger to pull.
And like picks are actually a really handy one you can always be thinking of, really. Like if you have a Blitzcrank, that's an out, right? Because it doesn't matter how far behind you are, if you can get a 5v4, you're probably going to win it.
Yeah.
So if you have Blitzcrank always kind of raises that specter of a 5v4. Blitzcrank will almost always be able to, if they can hit their hook, always be able to catch their AD carry and then get you that win. And if their AD carries all those kills, all right, that's your plan. That's how you're coming back in this game. You have a Blitzcrank. You don't need anything else, right? You don't need your AD carry to go God mode. You don't need your top laner to get the perfect TP flank. If you're a Blitzcrank and hit that hook, all of a sudden you've an out, you have a way to win this game, you've got that pick. So picks are actually a really handy one you can always consider. I'd use Blitzcrank, but you can think of how many champions are good at picks. We said
like Thresh or like so many supports.
Hook champions, yeah.
And yeah, it's like kind of the understanding that, we have to, we can't contest them without a pick sort of a thing. It is kind of a really important thing that people so often just won't do in solo queue. What they'll do is basically Blitzcrank will miss a couple of hooks, and then they'll be like, we have to fight, we have to contest this tower, and they'll 5v5 fight, and then they'll lose. Because Blitzcrank isn't going to do anything in a 5v5 fight unless you land the pick. Just like your team might also be behind as well. So basically just understanding that we have to wait, and if he doesn't land it, we're going to lose the game. But if he does land it, we can win the game, and that's our window of opportunity right there. We don't have an out otherwise. It's either we 5v5 fight, it's either he misses the hook, we 5v5 fight, we lose, or he lands the hook and we come back, or we have an opportunity to come back then, because otherwise there is no opportunity. So there's no point in fighting just being like, we have to fight, because you're going to lose regardless. So again, this is like stuff like, if you again, just to reference back to the split push again, maybe your split pusher isn't even ahead, maybe he's just has good wave clear or good pushing potential. Maybe it's a Nasus or something, and he still loses the 1v1 because they have like a Teemo or whatever. Like split pushes is still often a useful way to kind of try to at least slow down the opposing team, slow down their game plan, because again, this is solo queue. Again, we're always talking about solo queue in the podcast here. So we're always talking about other team making mistakes and stuff. And we'll move on to that more in the next section where we talk about pressure. But, the opposing team isn't going to make mistakes unless you ask them difficult questions. So split pushing is very much forcing the enemy team to either, back for the split push or continue to push. And, maybe your team just can't 5v5. Maybe your team just can't defend the tower. In which case, there's no point in sitting on the tower because they're just going to dive you and kill you. And you're not asking them a difficult question there because basically the question you're asking them is, hey, do you want to dive and kill me and then win the game, or do you want to dive and kill me and then win the game? So obviously they're going to go, well, I want to dive and kill you and then win the game. Whereas if you let's say you're building up a big side wave by split pushing, or you're trying to release pressure to their base in some way, what you're basically telling them is, do you want to dive and kill and win the game, or do you want to back for that fat wave that I have top lane for you? It's really big. I can get so many items off it. And I mean, to be honest, this is solo queue. Fat waves are like love. Fat waves are life.
Another thing before we go on to our next section, under team comps, is the idea of if they have a sort of pokey CG comp, then, so let's say they have Nidalee, they have the Caitlyn, Janna, kind of this disengagey CG comp, they're way ahead of us on gold. They have this big advantage. And you know exactly what they're made for, and that's sitting outside your tower while you're under tower, them throwing things at you, them hitting your tower down, them clearing waves. And you know that if that happens, we're screwed. Particularly if your team doesn't have wave clear. If you have a bad team comp to deal with the situation, like, okay, we can't get into that situation. So they're pushing you in, you're like, if we get there, we've lost. If we want to neutralize this advantage, the only way we can do it is by taking them where their comp doesn't like to be. And that's our top laner getting a nice TP flank behind them, running in and engaging from behind. We all engage, and hopefully we can maybe neutralize their advantage by getting a big 5v5, which isn't where they want to be, because those poke comps don't do very well. And Nidalee getting engaged on doesn't do very much. Caitlyn getting engaged on doesn't do very much either. So that's just another example of kind of analyzing how your team comps are set up against each other, and then figuring out where your advantages lie, where their disadvantages lie. And that's it. This is a thing you could do in kind of any game, whether you're ahead, whether you're kind of in the middle. But as Owen said earlier, and we'll go into a bit more later, you're really looking for these fine margins when it's about coming back. You're really focusing on eking out whatever advantages you can get, because they're hard to find.
Yeah, and also just to say on the idea of kind of proactivity and reactivity, because very often people kind of by default go into this kind of reactive state of playing the game when they're behind, and that they'll be like, we have to give. Maybe they'll make a mistake. We have to give. Just as I've already said, kind of you need to know when you just have to sit back and wait for a window of opportunity. You have to wait for a pick. You have to wait for an Elise cocoon, whatever it is, Blitzcrank hook. So too, as Andrew said, sometimes the circumstances dictate, the team comps dictate that you have to actually go. Otherwise, you're just going to lose the game. Because if you're going to sit back versus a team comp like that and just let them take your towers and take objectives and take Baron then and just push in and win the game, you're never going to, they're never going to make a mistake, because there's going to be a mistake to make with a siege comp like that. They never have to dive you to take your towers. So very much in that case, that's a matter of you saying, well, we're going to lose the game if we sit back. So we might win the team fight, but that's the only opportunity we have to come back in the game. So we therefore have to take the team fight whenever an even reasonable opportunity presents itself. And so again, important in any game to identify different compositions and identify what you have to do, but especially so in a situation where you're behind.
And just to refer, this is a really good point, and to refer to our last episode.
Thanks, man.
In which I talked a little bit about how, and I referred to kind of theory in Magic the Gathering, which is that you should never be dissuaded from a play because if it goes wrong, you might lose. That shouldn't be a reason. It shouldn't be because it would be scary. If you're behind and the only way you can win is that situation is by just going, right? Is by not letting them siege you down. If the only way to win that situation is to jump on them, you should jump on them. You shouldn't be like, oh, I don't want to, we could lose, because you're going to lose anyway. But you need to find what your play should be, only considering, is whichever gives you the highest percentage chance to win the game. So even if you're behind, but if you're behind and you can't get sieged on, and the only way you can win this game is by getting a good fight, then that's what you're going to have to do. And it doesn't feel great jumping into a 5v5 when you're behind. No. And chances are you're going to lose that game. And you're going to be like, oh, why did we fight? We were behind. But if you just let them siege you down, you just would have lost. Yeah. You would have gone out with a whimper rather than a bang.
And similarly as well, just again to re-emphasize the other point of knowing when not to engage and when to wait. Often enough you see teams that say they've lost a member and have lost Baron or something, and they still contest on like an inhib tower or something. And as opposed to just losing their inhib tower and their inhib, they lose the entire game. So again, it's basically, again, as with anything else we've said, important to have an understanding of when to stay or when to go, when to wait and to sit back, and when to understand that you can give up X objectives without hurting your chances of making a comeback, and to contest those objectives would lose you the game. But also it's important to know that you can't give up X objectives and you have to contest, otherwise you're going to leave the game. So basically, I think very much that all transitions onto our next topic, which is going to be that of applying pressure. And this is very much to do with the idea of reactivity versus proactivity, and the fact that you can, even when behind, be very proactive in your plays and still ask. As we said before, in any game, it's always important to ask the opposing team difficult questions to make them choose between different lines of play. It's harder to ask really difficult questions when you're behind, but it's certainly not that hard to at least force them to make some decisions and at least put them in a position where they can make a mistake. And this is the whole idea of pressure.
Yeah, so it's almost more important when you're behind, because pressure is really about forcing out any advantages you can, forcing them to make any mistakes you can. And as we said, it's being behind, you need to get these tart margins, you need to get any advantages you can possibly eke out of the game. So really, when you're behind, it shouldn't be like, oh God, we're behind. Just the classic thing is just go under towers and wave clear.
Yeah.
Because there are times where that's correct, but often people will resort to that because they're behind. They're like, we don't want to lose. We're going to die if we're out there in the cold. So often what you should be doing instead of falling back under your tower is actually, come on, you're an assassin, you're a Diana, you're 4, 4, and 4. You can kill people. Yeah. You should be walking into your jungle and waiting for one of their overly cocky members to walk past you so you can insta-burst them. All of a sudden, it's 5v4, you've got an advantage, you can do something with that. You can go take that ocean drake. That's a little advantage, you need to get any advantage you can. Yeah. So if you had just gone into your towers of Diana, use your Qs, try to clear the waves, then you would have just slowly died by attrition. But kind of that sort of thing, walking into your own jungle, waiting in the bush, trying to get a pick off, is a way that you actually could have gotten your way back into the game a little bit.
Yeah, and again, I think it's important at this point to kind of reference our previous episode where we talk about how not to throw and the mistakes you make while you're ahead, because I think at this point it's very important to identify those mistakes people often make when they're ahead and take advantage of them through applying pressure. So again, this is stuff like people are generally overconfident when they're ahead, right? People make mistakes all the time. When they're behind and when they're ahead, we can kind of divide it. Do I do the 3 block thing before?
No.
Okay, you can kind of say when you make a mistake when you're ahead, it'll generally make it so you're even. If you make a mistake when you're behind, you can lose the game. So it's more important not to make mistakes when you're behind to an extent, because you don't have that cushion. But people will make mistakes, and that's how you'll come back in a game from when you're behind. And people are actually often will make more mistakes when they're ahead because they're overconfident. They're like, I want to take everything. I'm the king of the Rift right now. I'm going to walk through their jungle. I'm not scared of anyone. And that's often why people will back again when you're pushing a side wave, as I said before, because they'll be like, I want to get that kill. I want to kill that guy and get that fat wave, as opposed to I want to end the game. And people are often very kind of disparate in how they want to end the game when they're ahead. And so they'll kind of be all over the place. They'll be messy in their plays. Often people will try to push down towers as only 3. Often people will be walking through the jungle as 1 sort of stuff. And this is really where proactivity can really, win that game. Identifying those mistakes and knowing when to go when they make mistakes is how to do it. So again, this is stuff like so often people's back timings are terrible when they're ahead. So often people, let's say, push a tower, push an inhib even, and then a couple of them will kind of sit around and still kind of keep clearing waves because they're like, maybe we should go for the Nexus guys. But other people will back because they want your blue buff, they want your red buff, they want other things, they have items to buy, and there'll be a couple of them in the base. And there's a real attitude from teams that are behind that, like, oh, they're ahead. Ooh, we don't
what
want
if
to
their
them.
teammates didn't actually back and they're waiting
didn't
there?
back. An understanding that they did back, or an understanding to kind of be really looking out for these opportunities to go and to be proactive and to go, we need to make this play because they're not winning a fight 3-5. And even if you go, let's say 3 for 3, that's good. You're evening the scales. You're evening the goal differential. And so often people will just like sit on towers or push as 2 members. And then maybe their teams will start picking them, be like, here, there's only 2 of you there, and then they'll back. But that window of opportunity when they kind of started to make a bad play, or when they kind of were messy in their plays, because people are messy. People always start pushing towers when there aren't 5 of them. People will always want that blue buff before they start sieging with the rest of their team. Identifying those opportunities where it's 5v4, it's 5v3, it's 5v2, or maybe some of them are backed, or maybe they haven't bought their items yet. Those are all really important ways that you can be proactive, and understanding when to be proactive is really important. I think similarly, stuff like, let's say, waiting in a bush is like the ultimate comeback tool. Because again, people are messy, people are walking through the jungle. They're not walking as 5 because they're all like alpha males. You know, they're all badasses who have just won this game and it's in bag. And so they want to walk around the jungle and take all of your camps, and they want to take all of your waves and take all of your targets before they end the game. So just sitting in a bush, because the enemy team, again, they're cocky, they're overconfident, they're going to make mistakes. They're not thinking, oh, they're going to jump us, because they're behind. Like, why would they jump us? We're the ones who are hunting them. They're scared. So actually being proactive in that way and being, we're going to sit in the bush, we're going to sweep this bush and sit in this bush. It's going to win you so many games. It's going to enable that comeback play. And then you can take Baron, then you can take a tower. And these are all ways that you have to realize that you can still be proactive when you're behind. You can still make plays when you're behind. You don't always have to be reacting to the opposing player's plays and hoping that they make mistakes.
Yeah, and like we talked last episode about kind of how the red mist descends when you're ahead. And we said, us as Powder Keg podcast listeners, we want to try to fight against that. We want to try to, stay as rational as possible, make the best mistakes possible. We don't want to get overly influenced by these even positive emotions. But like, we're talking about random crazy ass fuckers in solo queue here. They don't control their emotions. They're complete monkeys. Like, they just wail on their keyboard or their fists when they're happy, when they're angry. They're just like hitting things. So I mean, they're going to be making mistakes. When they're ahead, they're going to be doing crazy shit. And pressure, as we have on episode I think 5, build your own pressure cooker. We said it was about asking difficult questions and forcing people to make mistakes. Because asking difficult questions is giving people 2 bad options. So that would be something like either don't walk through my jungle or walk through my jungle and face us sitting in the bush to kill you.
Yeah.
So it's more important when you're behind to apply this pressure. We talked last episode about how important it was to apply when you're ahead. So you kind of finish off games, to kill off games. But it's much easier to kill off a game when you're ahead than it is to win a game when you're behind. So you need to be putting this pressure. You need to constantly be working to eking out advantages. And when you're behind, it's so scary. Doing these things could lose you the game as easy as they could win you the game. Walking into that bush, if there's 2 of them there, they're way ahead, they'll kill you. You're taking risks because you have to take risks because you're behind. Doing these things are scary, but plays aren't about whether or not they're scary. They're not about whether or not you might lose the game, because you're going to lose the game anyway if you do nothing. You need to take these risks. You need to do things. You need to put on pressure. If you look stupid because it doesn't work out, then you look stupid because it didn't work out. But you need to do these things, because if you don't do anything, you're just going to lose.
Yeah, and again, I think the whole idea of kind of like sitting in a bush and stuff does transition on fairly well to kind of vision and how important vision is in, gaining a comeback. And I think, we can talk about like placing words, and very often people will tell you, when you're behind, it's better to have yellows, it's better to have blues, because it's more important to have vision of the opposing team than it is to deny them vision of you. And I think that is definitely an important thing to say, because certainly, as we said before, when you're ahead and when you're trying to pressure an advantage, having sweepers is generally very good, because if you do randomly encounter the opposing team in the jungle, generally it's going to work out better for you, because you win a fight, you win a blind fight with them because you're ahead. But just as it's important to have this defensive vision and to see see the big neutral objectives so you can maybe contest them on them, and see your jungle so you can walk through your jungle safely, so too can it often be important, and this really does filter into the idea of proactivity, to sweep, buy sweepers, buy pinks. Again, I mentioned sitting in a bush before. It's like you don't want to sit in a bush if you don't know if it's watered or not. Like, so have a pink in your inventory and drop it. Inventory. Sit in the bush, drop a pink, and just wait for a while. It's 5 minutes. They're going to assume you're just cowering in your base, like they're going to come soon for us,
shivering in the winter cold.
But like they're going to be cocky. They're going to face check. Of course they will. It's solo queue. And then you just 5 men jump on them, and like, again, you're at a disadvantage. So if 5 of them face check, chances are you're going to lose that. But vision is one of the ways that you can really use these kind of tight margin. You can use these other kind of methods of playing. So on a basic level, like mechanically, if they play well and you're down in gold, they're going to win a team fight, right? So what you can do is you can use game sense, you can use strategy, you can use vision is one really important one to kind of offset this disadvantage. You can use, let's say, kind of call it like the opening move, I think, before. So if you have the jump on them to an extent because you have vision control or vision advantage, or you just swept the bush and you're all sitting in it, that's one way to kind of turn it into a 5v4, to kill one person, just all ping that person and all jump on them. And so vision, both aggressive vision and defensive vision are important. And I think just to mention there, because I just wanted to mention that to start off with before we talk about other types of vision, it is important to understand that you can be both proactive and reactive with vision in terms of sweeping a bush as well as warding it.
And we talked last episode about one big way people throw is they go like, well, we went to take the Baron and we were way ahead, but they all arrived and the Cinder threw this thing and everything just went wrong and we all died.
Yeah.
And we said, well, to fix this problem, you want to baby proof, and which was a ridiculous analogy, but we used it. And we said, what you want to do is when you're going to take that Baron, you want to ward at their jungle to that side. You want it all to be really nicely lit up, really nicely warded, so that you can't have that throw. When they arrive, you'll know where each person's coming from. You'll know what you're dealing with. It's going to be a lot harder to throw in that situation. So now we've switched around this episode. We're now the other team. These guys are taking the Baron. Well, have they baby-proofed that side of the jungle? You should probably know that. You should probably have an idea by looking at their support, where they're moving. You're not going to be fully analysing this support, looking at their inventory, seeing how many wards they have, that sort of thing. But you should have an idea based on how dark your side of the map is in that way. And if you have it warded, you'll see them coming into warding, that sort of thing. You should have an idea of how much vision they have, and then you'll have an idea of how much you can contest that. So if they're taking that Baron, if you have cleared your side of the jungle in that way, then you have an option to contest that. But if you don't have vision of that, if that's all lit up for them, then you probably just shouldn't go for it, because they've baby-proofed that, they've done the right things. That can't be something you can contest. So just having an idea of what your vision is in the map at the time could be helpful in that way.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the examples of just how powerful vision is, in that this isn't really related to when you're behind, but just as all these things are also very important when you're even or ahead. You see often enough, like, people contest, let's say, just Dragon, like an early Dragon when they have absolutely no vision around it. The opposing team swept, place pinks, have vision, and they just lose. They get like aced or whatever. And that's just a really good example of how, like, it can really offset it. Like the gold, let's say you're down gold. So this is them, this is you. And then vision can really bring that up a bit. If you have good vision, you have vision control, you have the opener, you have the ability to jump on them. And because when you're even and you try to contest a Dragon that they have vision all over, like, it gives them that advantage, and that's why they're beating you at that Dragon. That's why people in pro play and stuff will just go, no, we're not contesting that Dragon, we just can't, we don't have vision. You'd be like, but why? They're ahead even. But it's like, no, they just don't do it because it's behind, and it is a deficit, that vision itself. And so specifically with stuff like neutral objectives, because I think those are some of the ways that people throw the most, often when they have a slight advantage, then they go for a Baron or something. I think one of the most important things to say about Baron in particular is just, especially if it's early enough in the game, like 25 minutes, 30 minutes, have a bit of patience around Baron. Because what you see so often is there's kind of this real messiness around, are we going to start Baron? Are we going to bait Baron? Are we going to turn and fight? Are we going to continue doing Baron in solo queue? So people will often just start Baron. Or maybe half the people will be like, no, let's just sit in this bush. And then half of them start it. And what you do is you kind of maybe get a blue in, maybe you get a couple of wards in, and then you're kind of surrounding them. And what often enough is in solo queue, the losing team will be like, oh, they're on Baron! Go! And they'll all just run at them and just dive them, and the enemy team will turn because they only just started Baron, and they'll kill them all, and then they'll win the game. And so have a little bit of patience, basically, in this case. So this is a case of you don't want to pull the trigger yet because there's no reason to pull the trigger, and your window of opportunity is only going to get greater and only get more advantageous. So Baron is hitting them. Like, just sit around, throw a couple of skill shots at them. Like, it happens so often in solo queue where you start the Baron and maybe you don't have great vision, maybe you do have vision, but they're kind of surrounding you and they're just poking you with skill shots, and you're like, should we turn? Should we stop? Maybe one person turns and the entire enemy team that's behind just kill them. And then you're like, do we keep doing Baron? Do we stop? And you throw, because it's again, everyone has these different ideas that they're trying to go through with. Some people want to continue Baron, some people want to rush it, some people want to stop it. Have a little bit of patience specifically around Baron towards the early game, and just understand that you're not in any rush. Baron is doing so much damage to them, and it's a huge advantage to you that they're doing Baron. As long as you have patience, understand, and have vision, very importantly, of the Baron, so you understand when you can go and you can actually turn that fight and pick it.
I think we're running out of time here, so anything else on vision before we move on to the last bit?
No, just be patient, cool, calm, and collected.
So yeah, the fifth section we have down here is under general mentality, but we've kind of inserted into a lot of what we've been saying, and the main thing to kind of take from the idea of how you should be generally approaching comebacks is that you're really working off tight margins. And that, I mean, it's all very obvious, but you're really going to have to play a lot better than you usually would play if you want to win games and you're behind. You're not entitled to win these games. There's no way, if you just continue, if you play the game at the level you've been playing, so you're if you get to a point where you're losing, you continue to play that level, you're probably going to lose the game.
Or even if you just play as well as the opposing team, but they already have an advantage, you're going to lose the game because they already have an advantage.
So the whole time when you're playing, you need to constantly be thinking about how you can get small advantages, how you can really be playing out of your mind so you can win this game, because You know, the other 4 members of your team, they don't listen to the Paddock Gate podcast. Maybe they will in a couple of years when we're massive. But so you have this over them. So you need to, you've got this extra responsibility because you know you're going to need to play this well. You know you're going to need to find these things. You should always be looking out for things. This is a challenge for you. When you're in this situation, you kind of realize, okay, we're behind. I know what I need to do now. I need to be placing vision in this place. I need to be going into bushes to try to find picks. I need to be looking at their team comp, looking at our team comp, think about how we can beat them in this way. And sure, ideally, you should be doing these things in every game. But this is when it really, really, really matters, because this is when you eke out any advantage you could possibly get, because otherwise you're going to lose the game. And on top of that, you really can't afford to make mistakes in these games. Another thing that sounds pretty obvious, but it's like when you're the only one who's strong in the team. You've got that extra responsibility. If you make mistakes, it's going to be catastrophic because you're already so far behind. One mistake will so easily snowball into other people in your team dying, or them getting an objective, or them getting even more map vision, or them taking these turrets. You just have to be, not only do you have to be taking risks so that you can do things well, but you also can't really afford to make too many mistakes. So that's why it's really hard to come back from games.
And actually, you said something there that actually we hadn't discussed before, which is the idea of see it as a challenge. I do think we haven't actually talked at all about kind of like tilt or any of that sort of thing. I think that's a big factor that causes people to go from being behind to just losing the game, because you know they get more disorganized when they're behind. They get more frustrated. They play worse mechanically when they're behind. And I think just kind of maybe you know you've lost a big team fight. You're kind of losing, and you can tell by the score. Maybe you can tell by the objective. You can tell by the gold. Just take a step back. Go, okay, I'm going to just take a second. We're behind. Basically, just like sit back. Say, you know, this is a challenge. I'm playing the game from behind. Identify it as a challenge. Be like, how do we win this game? This is a puzzle. It's a tricky puzzle. And I have to be better than the opposing team at solving this puzzle. Their puzzle they have to solve is how to win the game. Much easier for that. What you have to do is you have to figure out how to come back from being behind. And so take a step back. Again, be cool, be calm, try to relax, and just say, how do we win this game? Identify your strengths of your team, the weaknesses of their team, and try to win off that. And I think mentality is actually very important when you're behind. More so than when you're ahead, because obviously your mentality is almost always going to be grand when you're ahead, because you know if you're ahead, life's great, it's all gravy. I think also, just transition to the last point that we were saying, which is the question of did you really come back? And this is kind of the last little thing we can talk about in terms of comebacks, because just to give a little analogy, how often does it happen in, let's say, it's kind of getting towards late game, it's like 35 minutes or whatever, they've taken, let's say, 2 of your inhibs, and then you win a big team fight on the last inhib. You ace them, you go 5-0, you're kind of low, and you're like, push mid, go push. And you all go mid, you clear the wave, you get their inhib tower, and all their respawn times are like 3, 2, and you're like, get the inhib, and you start getting the inhib, and then the opposing team come up, and then you fight them and you lose the game. Because they ace you, and then they go over and they win the game. Because the only reason you won the previous team fight was because you waited for a nice pick from your Blitzcrank, you waited for a nice Elise Q, you got that window of opportunity, you took advantage of it, and you won because you used that to offset your deficit. But then you just 5v5 fighted them, and you still weren't even. So again, in this case, it's very much an example of you have to understand that a comeback is gradual often. It's not just you're behind, you make a good play, you're ahead even. It's very often you're behind, you're less behind. Oh, they're making mistakes now. The more mistakes they make, the more likely it is for them to make more mistakes because of tilt and all sorts of things. So like understand when you can take out the small, you can eke out the small advantages, because again, it's all about fine margins. It's all about maybe we can take that inhib tower, but we can't take the inhib. We have to back off, heal up, wait for another opportunity. We're not going to 5v fight them again, 5v5 fight them again, because we understand that we can't unless again we get a good pick. So yeah, again, it's just an example of understand when you haven't come back yet, you're still in the process of doing it, and to still identify those strengths of your team and take advantage of them.
And just one last point on the whole mentality point, it's going back a step, but just like surrender votes. Like how many times have you had a game when you were way behind and then no one was surrender voting in your team and everyone was actually just no one was flaming, everyone was clearly focusing on what that do. Some people were maybe saying a couple of positive comments. Those games, I find I win them fairly often actually. When no one's surrender vote, no one's kind of tilting each other by saying, well, I've given up. Because that's what surrender vote is. It's not saying, I've seen this as a challenge. It's telling your whole team, well, you should all give up too. Do you want to give up?
Team, I've given up.
Do you want to give up?
Full stop.
Because I've given up. And that's just... So don't surrender vote. Unless you really think the game is just over.
If you want to surrender vote, sure. Go surrender vote. Don't say anything. No. Let's say if you think the game's completely lost and you don't want to waste time, press surrender vote. Let's say your entire team says no. Drop it. Don't surrender vote again because your team don't want to surrender vote. And if, let's say, another person on your team goes surrender vote, I almost see it as something that you can do once in a game. And you shouldn't be whining or complaining about it and saying, please surrender vote. Why are you surrender voting, wasting my time? Surrender. And you see it all the time in prep. Like, people will surrender vote. Let's say they think the game's lost and that they have no chance of winning. Sure. If you think it's 30 minutes and you're down 50 kills, go for a surrender vote. If your team don't want to surrender, there's no point in complaining and yelling at them and saying, please surrender vote, you're wasting my time and AFKing. Just drop it. Try your best. They're trying their best. And just see if you can win the game. Again, it's just like...
Yeah.
But
as I was saying, don't surrender vote unless it should be a special occasion when you do, because what you are doing is just telling your whole team I've given up and that you should give up too. You're tilting the hell out of them. I get tilted when someone surrender votes and I'm really trying to win a game.
Especially when you're like not that far behind. It's like
exactly, and that's almost every situation. You should really be saving it for time, like a special occasion. When you were, I was at like 30 minutes or 50 kill behind, something ridiculous where it's like there's really no point doing this because there's just no way we could lose or no way we could win this.
Yeah, or maybe even early, like 15 minutes of saying they've taken 2 inhibs and you're just like, I don't want to play out the last 5 minutes trying to wave clear.
Yeah, so but just basically just be very careful about it, and on top of that, just generally how you're communicating with your team, how you're if you are tilted, okay, you're tilted, but don't let it show. If other people are tilted, try to mute them. Try to ignore them. But yeah, it's just a general thing about how mentality can beget people actually trying harder. How you can make each other try harder. You can encourage you. How you can push each other on. Our very first episode was on tilt, and we talked a lot about kind of helping your teammates play better. And that's the sort of thing that's going to come in super, super helpful when you are losing a game, when you need to come back, and then tilt is really your worst enemy.
Yeah. Very true. I think that's about all we can say. Just again, it's all about fine margins. You have to be better with your mentality. You have to be better with everything.
We need to finish up because we're way over time. Yeah. So shout outs. Follow us on Twitter. We're at Powderkeg. We're at Powderkeg Podcast on Twitter. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes. Huge thanks to
Producer Robin.
Well, yeah, Producer Robin. I was going to thank the person who thing again. Huge thanks again to Chomerty for the amazing thing on iTunes. 5-star review. Best way to help us get out there. We're on YouTube now. If you're seeing us on YouTube or if you're listening to us, we're releasing this both in audio and in video.
Please like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe, comment. You can reach us on our email. We're at what are we?
Powderkegpodcast@gmail.com.
Powderkegpodcast@gmail.com.
The Powderkeg Podcast or Powderkeg Podcast?
The Powderkegpodcast@gmail.com. We're going to be posting us on Reddit. So you can get through us in any sorts of ways, any sort of sound.
And again, we're both on holidays at the moment. So if you have any questions or queries, or you just want like help, look at the op.gg. We'll do it. Because we have free time.
Yeah, and so we're on iTunes, which means we're on every podcasting app, and we're also on Stitcher. So thank you very much for listening.
And we'll hopefully see you next week.
Bye.